Hi, everyone. I'm Jerry Bunkowski, and welcome to this week's edition of the Racing Beat Podcast, right here on the Believe Podcast Network. We hope you enjoyed last week's debut edition of the Racing Beat with NASCAR Hall of Famer Ray Evernham. And this week, we have got drag racing royalty and also Ray Evernham's good buddy, Don The Snake Prudhomme. Don will be talking about his new book that just came out recently. Got a lot of ground to cover, a lot of time to talk about things, and I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. So without further ado, let's get right to it with Don The Snake Prudhomme right here on the Racing Beat Podcast. Very pleased and honored to have Don Prudhomme, the Snake, as the second guest on our podcast, the Racing Beat here on the Believe Podcast Network. And, this is a real treat for me, not just as a reporter, but a fan, but also Don as a friend as well, too. And I just love talking. I love talking to you. I mean, you really are the coolest guy at racing. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But, the biggest thing that's going on for you right now in your life is the book. You came out with a book. It was written by, or co-written with Elena Shearer. It's called Don The Snake Prudhomme, My Life Beyond the 1320. Tell me a little bit about how the book has been received so far, but also how did the idea of the book come together too?
Well, I was approached by CarTech to do a book, and I've been approached by other, book people to do a book, but I didn't really want to get into just doing a book about my speed and ET, and I won this race and stuff that most people know about. So I wanted to do a book that would talk about my childhood, and I was hoping the book would people would, after reading it, would understand me a little bit more because, during my days of thundering out at the racetrack, I didn't really have a lot of time to talk to people, to get to know the fans as much as I wish I had. And I think a lot of them thought I was a pretty uptight guy, which I was, and it spells that out in the book, but I was just trying to win races. But I was hoping this book that people would understand me a little bit more and know where that drive came from.
Well, you did an excellent job. And I learned so much about you, and I've known you for almost 35 years. I still learned a lot of things about it. But the one thing, and I want to use it, I want to follow up that thing. During your career, and you kind of alluded to it, you were always a very private person. People really didn't get to know Don Prudhomme unless they were your really close friends, in your inner circle of close friends. Was being private by design, or did it just kind of evolve that way? And then now that you're out of, you're no longer competing or you're no longer team owner, you've become very much more open, very much more public. And this book obviously is a very good indicator of that.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. I was a pretty uptight guy, but you got to remember, man, and it spells it out in the book, the way I started in my childhood and the way I came up and painting cars and having trouble with dyslexia and things like that in my life, that once I got my teeth into something, which was drag racing, and I found out that I could make a living, well, my God, I didn't want anybody to disturb that. I didn't want anything to go wrong there. So I was very protective of what I was doing because I was scared I was going to lose it. So that's what drove me.
What was the biggest thing in your career? Be it when you were growing up in high school, early part of drag racing. Was there one thing that really, for lack of a better word, signaled what the Snake was going to become, or who the Snake was going to become? I should say that way.
Well, I didn't figure that out myself until I got into the Road Kings of Burbank, which was a car club, because I didn't think I would amount to much because of, once again, my childhood coming up. It was a pretty rough time. And it spells that out in the book too. But once I got into the Road Kings, and that sounds a little corny maybe that you got into a car club, but really and truly in those days, it was such a huge thing because not only did I find drag racing there, I found a family basically, bunch of guys, and we were really tight, and I thought maybe I could make something out of myself. But getting into the car club, the Road Kings of Burbank, was a huge step for me.
Right.
And that's where I found not only racing, but I found a family. I found a bunch of guys and Tommy Ivo, people like that really got me set in the right direction as far as going racing.
What now? How did the name The Snake come about? I know it's in the book, but I wanted to make sure I ask you about it.
Yeah, it's not much of a story. It's really being quick off the starting line. I was driving a car called the Greer Black and Prudhomme car, which is cars in Bruce Meyer's collection. It's a beautiful car. We were winning everything at the local drag strips and all around the country, actually. It was just hard to beat. And one of the guys in the crew started calling me Snake because I was quick off the starting line. And the next thing I know, the announcer did. And the next thing I know, we went to Mattel Toy Company with Tom McEwen, my all-time best friend. And the two of us, he had the nicknames Mongoose, I'm Snake. So after going to Mattel and them sponsoring us, I had the nickname forever. It was not, it was a handle.
Exactly.
And I like it. It's cool.
Exactly. Now, the book's out now, and you're also working on a documentary with Eric Anderson. I've talked to Eric a few times. It sounds like it's going to be a really exciting project. I'm waiting for it to come out, though. I mean, I know he said maybe another year or two before it comes out, but I mean, from what I understand from Eric, you have really, it kind of is a extension, if you will, of the book, and it talks so much about you and you're coming up, what like you said in the book as well, the challenges you face and that kind of thing. What are your thoughts about the documentary so far? I mean, I know he's done a lot of filming, interviewed a lot of people and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, the book took 2 years to do the book, and so a documentary is that in itself is a challenge because of the time and the cost to it. So we're hoping to get it done here. It's going to take a lot more hard work, and he's looking for backing for it right now. And that's starting to look pretty good. So maybe we'll even see it on Netflix,
Great. I would love to see it in there. What are you doing these days? I mean, what's keeping you busy?
Well,
what are you enjoying doing? That kind of thing.
Well, I don't have to tell you with this virus, things have really changed completely. Here we are sitting on this Zoom talk, and before we would do it in person. But
right.
No, things have changed a great deal. And last year, was a real problem with the Austin Prock car running that car and John Force not running. And I've been a part of his team. I brought some sponsorship to him. Couldn't think of a better guy to bring it to. And so we're trying to continue that this year. We get started in March. NHRA is kicking off the season in March. And we're still not sure about Austin Prock. We're trying to get the funding right for him, but right now, that's been a struggle. So hopefully, keep your fingers crossed. We'll have Austin out there in Gainesville at the first race of the year,
right,
in March.
One of the things I really admire about you is that you still have that competitive drive, and the last couple of not last year, but the 2 previous years, you couldn't do it last year because of the COVID thing, but you went and did racing off-road racing in Baja, and I understand you may be doing that again in April. Is that the next one?
Yeah, the next one's in April, and of course they're having trouble down there in Mexico with the virus too. So I was on the phone yesterday, and we're trying to work out plans to go down and run the Nora 1000. It's a 1,000-mile race,
right?
And we break it up in 5 days, which makes it a little easier, but. It looks like I'm going to run it. It looks like I'm officially going to run it. But the problem, Jerry, is I'm turning 80, and I'll be 80. I can't wait to read the press thing. 80-year-old going off-road racing. Instead of Don Prudhomme, it's going to be 80-year-old guy.
Right.
But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go do it. And what the hell? Why not?
Exactly. Have you figured out who your co-driver will be? I mean, it's still going to be your PJ or Parnelli Jones's grandson, or who are you going to be racing?
I hope it will be Jagger. Yeah, I'm planning on Jagger Jones doing it with me. So he doesn't quite know it yet, but Well, he's so damn fast, and I'm
Right.
okay. I can go okay. I've had a lot of experience at it and I can run pretty hard, but we're in a Can-Am this year and it's all been redone. It's got more boost in it. It's a fast car. And so, but Jagger's just really quick. He's like 19 years old, for Christ's sakes, and
Right.
he flies. So I'll do a lot of navigating and he'll do a lot of, he'll be the wheelman.
Exactly. Now, in addition to that, I know we talked a little bit before the recording here about
Mhm.
you're doing a lot of like trips, with your wife and
Yeah.
motorcycle trips and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Tell me about the enjoyment of that kind of thing, because I mean obviously that you've been with your wife for a long time, but
Mhm.
even in these days, of course with the virus, but the fact that you and your wife are enjoying this thing, you're both on your bikes, you're both going off road and that kind of thing. Tell
Mhm.
me about just the enjoyment of being with the
Well,
family, because you weren't able to be with the family a lot during your career, obviously as a racer and a team owner, but now you've got that time, and I'm sure you're enjoying it.
yeah, really, and that's you're exactly right. We're leaving on the 11th February. What am I saying? February. When are we leaving? What the hell is that? What month are we into? What's today? Third or the fourth, isn't it?
Right.
February.
Right.
So we're leaving on the 11th. Yeah, I lose track of time. It's funny when you're not working, you don't care what day it is.
Right.
I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday or what, because who cares,
Right. Right.
But yeah, we're going down to Parker, Arizona. It's on a PJ Jones, Jagger's dad, PJ, has got an off-road trip planned. There's about 7 of us are going to take an off-road. We'll be gone for like 3-4 days
Mhm.
out into the desert, and so I love doing stuff like that. And then when I'm, really feeling good, we'll go down to Baja on the motorcycles and run Baja. And we're planning a trip going down to the tip of Baja. It's another, it's a 1,000-mile trip, but the highways down there now are pretty nice. And on a BMW road bike, all-terrain bike, it's a lot of fun because we take off-road, and dirt roads, all kinds of stuff.
Right, exactly. Wherever two wheels will take you, you're going to go there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Now, I understand that you've got a new addition to the family. You got a new puppy, I understand. Tell me about
Oh
that.
yeah. Gabby, yes, Gabby. She's a golden retriever, and she was a breeding dog. And
Hmm.
a fellow called and asked if we would take her in, and said, "Heck yeah!" I mean, her puppies were like $3,500. Her
Wow.
puppies,
Wow.
yeah. So this dog's just, oh my God! And we fell in love with her, and so she's part of the family. And of course, we've got Jesse and JJ, and we've got other dogs. But we're real dog people. My daughter has a couple of dogs too. So we spend our time with our dogs. And we bring them to work every day. We come to our shop in Vista and bring our dogs with us.
You're kind of like me. We're a dog family too. We've got two German shepherds and an old English bulldog who thinks he's a German shepherd. They get into scraps all the time, but there
Oh
it's. I
yeah.
mean, we call it our little dog family. I mean, so ever since my wife and I have been married, we've always had either multiple cats or multiple dogs or both. I mean, we also have let's see, 4 cats now. One of which is my daughter's. We're kind of babysitting her, but she's going to be leaving here in probably in a month or two. But yeah, I can definitely relate to you. I mean, that's why I like you so much. We're both, we have a lot in common here. I like that a lot. So, all right, let me ask you this. Uh, how is life for you with the 80? We talked about it off the air, but you mentioned about 80. You're turning 80 in April. What does that mean to you? I mean, is that like another? I mean, is that a milestone, or is that something maybe you wish you could put a few more years back a little bit? I mean, what's your thoughts about turning 80?
God, I don't know. I've been trying to deal with it. We're losing a lot of friends. I'm losing a lot of them. I
Yeah.
lost Tom McEwen, the mongoose. He was 80, and that's, uh, I'm fortunate. My health is good and everything. And I think it's just another number out there that you have. And as long as my health is good, I feel okay about it. It's kind of strange to think that you're 80 years old. Yeah. I'm still trying to deal with that, man. It's quite a trip.
Right. the fact that you are in good health, the fact that you're still competing, like you're hoping to go to
Yeah.
Baja in April, the fact that you're still doing a lot of things, that has to keep you young, I would imagine.
Well, I think so. I'll tell you what, I try to eat proper. I'm sipping on a Diet Coke here right now, but I try to eat proper and I watch my weight big time.
Hmm.
And I have to struggle with that the older you get, but I watch my weight and try to keep an attitude and find the youngest people you can find to run around with. When I run around with Jagger Jones, man, I feel like I'm one of the guys. But,
Exactly.
you know, at night I turn into 80 again, but it's okay. It's okay. I just gotta stay focused and think young.
Exactly. Going back to the book for a second, I haven't read
Yeah.
through the whole thing, but I mean, I've gone through a good part of it. And one of the things that, I knew this, but the way, your co-author described you and how you describe yourself was, I know I knew you were interracial, but you
Hmm.
talk about in the book about, the difficulties you had at times, growing up in the San Fernando Valley, going to school, getting on the racetrack. Tell me about, how was that to deal with? And the reason I'm asking you this is because this kind of hits home with me. Obviously I'm white, but I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. So my best friend for 45 years before he passed away a year and a half ago was black. I have so many black friends. Still go back to the old neighborhood every now and then. Um, and you know, a lot of people don't they don't understand what being either being interracial or being
Yeah.
involved with people of other races like I was and growing up around them. I mean, we spent 25 years in that neighborhood, and the people were the best. I mean, the absolute best. Our neighbors. I mean, I couldn't think any more highly of them. They were so good. Well, tell me
Yeah.
about your situation. I mean, how difficult
Well,
was it, and how did you kind of overcome it, if you will?
well, it was difficult as a youngster. Uh, at my age now, it's a piece of cake. Actually, I kind of enjoy it, because you see, you watch television, you see things about the news, you see things about rioting, you see things about blacks, you see things about white. I'm kind of able to put a balance to a lot of that. I think there's black people has done a lot of terrible things, rioting and so on, and I think there's a lot of white people that's done some terrible things too.
Right,
You know,
right.
so but as a kid growing up, I really didn't know much about that. You'll read, the folks can read it in the book, but my folks came from Louisiana.
Right.
It was a Creole part of Louisiana that they were from, but they told me they were from Texas, and they were, as a kid, I'd come home and say, "Hey, Mom, this kid at school called me black."
Hmm.
And I go, she said, "Well, don't pay any attention to that. You're French. I am actually French."
Right, right, right.
And so I was taught to not pay attention to that, and that I'm white. I'm strictly white and not didn't have any racial in my bloodline,
Right,
and
right.
kept banging that into my head until finally I took a trip down to Louisiana and found out who exactly I was, and took a DNA test, found out exactly who I was, and it was just a huge relief. But they were trying to protect us from prejudice. They were trying to protect us coming out here to California and live, because in California there's just a bunch of people from all around. You weren't really classified as one certain thing. You weren't a prune picker out here in California. Prune picker, they call them. You're born and raised, and
Right.
I was actually born here, but my folks are from Louisiana, the Creole part called Cane River down near Shreveport.
Okay. And how long were you there before you moved back to California?
Well, I went down there as a kid, on trips and stuff, but not very long. I was just as a toddler. I was down in Louisiana, but like I say, I've spent a lot of time down there recently.
Hmm.
I've met a lot of aunts and people that didn't know I existed, or that I didn't know existed,
Hmm.
and it's been quite a trip. It's been amazing, amazing life.
Talk about a little bit about the drag racing world. When you got into drag racing, I understand that there were a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but there were some people that didn't want you racing because of your racial background.
Yeah, there was a lot of name calling and so on and things that I had to bite my tongue over, and sometimes I threw a punch or two.
Right.
Uh, yeah, that happened, but Jerry, it wasn't really that bad. I didn't. It wasn't too bad, but when it was bad, it was bad.
Right.
But most people had enough respect and so on, and that they weren't prejudiced, so,
Right.
but it was tough.
Okay. I'm going to change gears a little bit here. You have been called over the years the coolest guy in drag racing. I've even heard you being called the coolest guy in all of sports. Is that kind of like a badge of honor? I mean, and what makes Don Prudhomme so cool?
I have no damn idea how that started. I have no idea. Rusty Wallace will say that about me, or maybe Ray Abraham or somebody, and I don't know, man. I was a big fan of Steve McQueen's, and and I knew him a little bit. Maybe some of that cool stuff rubbed off on me. I'm not sure.
Right, exactly.
But I like those guys. Yeah, I mean they were cool guys to hang out with, So I got to hang with him a little bit back in the early days, and he was, in my opinion, he was the coolest dude that ever come along.
And you're number two then again, I guess then, right?
Just to be mentioned in the same breath with him.
Exactly. All right, now what is something that you still haven't done in your life that you want to achieve? Is there anything on your bucket list that you still want to do?
Oh my God! yeah. There's a lot of stuff, but I don't think it's possible. I would love to get in an Indy car,
right,
and take a lap around the Indy 500. Not wide open, but I'd love to drive an Indy car. I've always wanted to drive an Indy car, and it's just been a passion of mine. But in the book, I explain that because Dan Gurney, I got to know Gurney quite well, and
right.
I used to bug Gurney when he'd come into Keith Black's picking up parts, and I was working in a little shop at Keith Black Racing Engines, and I'd bug him about, hey man, I'd like to drive an Indy car. How do I get to do that? And so, I finally bugged him enough. One day he said to me, he says, son, if you want to do it bad enough, you'll find a way. And I went, that's a hell of a thing to say to me. But after I thought about it for a while, he was so right. So I never was able to jump over and do it because perhaps I didn't want to do it bad enough. I think we all have something in our life we regret we haven't done. And I regret that I never got that chance, but obviously I'm way too old for anything like that. But still, maybe I could talk to my buddy Chip and ask let me take a lap around the 500 one of these times.
I was just going to mention about Chip. I said,
one of his cars.
I'm gonna call him and say, hey, you got to get down in the car and get him. Obviously, I was the one thing that I had was really great was I think it was 92, I believe it was. And that was when they just debuted the Dodge Viper. And it was before, I'm sorry, it was just like a couple months before they were going to debut the Dodge Viper. But I was in Indianapolis, and guess who my driver was? He said, come on, son, we're going to go take a little ride. We're doing 160 down the backstretch. Who do you think that was? Very big name. I'll just tell you, Carroll Shelby.
Mario?
No, Carroll Shelby. I mean, that was so...
Oh, Carroll, what a cool...
Yeah, it was one of the best, one of the highlights of my life because I remember as we're going down the backstretch, we came out of turn 2 at Indy. I remember I had to grab my glasses and hold them out because they were going out like this. They were going to fall off, and I mean we did I think we did two or three laps. I think it was 2. But the funny thing is, one of the PR people from Dodge said, "How'd you like it?" I said, "Man, that was fantastic. I mean to." Not only be in the car that's coming out, people are talking about how it's going to be so good, and then the icing on the icing on the cake was Carroll Shelby was the driver, and then they said, "Well, you want to take it out for a spin?" I go, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And then they said, and then the PR person's boss tapped him on the shoulder and says, no, I don't think we can do this. So that kind of turned me out of that. But I would have loved to do that. But well, I mean, you still could do it. I mean, maybe you should talk to Chip about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I just like to take a lap around there, just, put a governor on it or something. But I mean,
exactly.
those are things. I mean, I just love open wheel racing. I'm just a complete nut about it. Formula One and especially Indy cars.
Right.
I'm really big into the Indy car, and I follow them just real close. I'm real close friends with Mario Andretti's. I just love him. I sent him a book, and my phone rang one day and he says, "Hey, this is Mario. Your book is fantastic." And it was just cool for him to call and tell me about the book.
Exactly. This is kind of a tough question to answer, I'm sure. Throughout your career, your life as a whole, what do you consider your biggest regret?
My biggest what?
Regret.
Biggest regret?
Right.
Oh God, I mean that's a strange question. I don't really have any real regrets. I mean, I married my school girl, my sweetheart in school that I met there in 7th grade.
Right.
I have a wonderful daughter. Man, I don't regret anything. The only thing I regret is not being able to drive an Indy car or a Formula One car. But outside of that, my personal life has been fine. I'm just very very content. Very content.
I have to pay you a very high compliment. I mean, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I still remember, and this is, maybe you may or may not remember this, but it was after the Northridge earthquake, which was, what was it, 92, I think it was? And I remember your shop was, literally right across the way from a building that when I went out to visit you to do a story on you for USA Today, the building was just devastated. Your shop basically was unscathed for the most part. But what was really cool was how you said, "Hey, let's go in the car and let's go take a ride around here." I mean, for me to be with one of my heroes, I mean, obviously as a reporter, but I mean, to have one of my heroes say, "Let's go take a ride," and then you showed me all the the damage. I mean, we went by the mall, the Northridge Mall, how bad that was over there. And then you said, "Let's go see Shirley." I thought that was the greatest thing. We went to see Shirley Muldowney. She was at home. And I'll never forget, we walked in the door, and you asked her, "How you doing, Shirley?" And the first thing she said is, "I'm moving out of this damn state. I'm going back to Michigan." And I thought that was so cool. It's one of the highlights of my life. And just that's I think that's what people, the fans, when they talk about you, see you, hear you, they like that coolness. I mean, that you could just do that. I mean, and I was so honored that you did do that. I mean, I remember the story I wrote about you. It was a cover story. It took me 26 hours to write because I was a perfectionist about it. My boss kept on saying, "Are you done with it yet?" I go, "No, I want to add this in here, and I want to add this in there." Then I had to take a few things out because of the length of the story. But I still remember that's one of the highlights of my life, that Don Prudhomme was essentially my chauffeur or my tour guide. He's shown me all around, and that was really, really cool.
Oh, that is cool. I didn't think much about it. I just thought that you'd enjoy going over and saying hi to Shirley, and I still talk to her. We still stay in touch, text each other, and she's cool. She's tough as nails, and she's also 81. Shh, don't tell anyone I told you that.
Okay,
but she's older than I,
right?
so she's older than I, so I can always throw a little dig in there. So you are older, right?
Exactly.
Yes, I'm 81.
Exactly.
Yeah. She's great.
Exactly. Just a few more questions I want to go through with you and Don. I mean, what was the biggest? And this is going to be a really hard question to answer too. What was the biggest achievement in your career? What was the number one highlight that Don Prudhomme says of his life?
It would have to be meeting Tom McEwen, becoming buddies with him, and going to Mattel Toy Company and getting them to sponsor the Snake and the Mongoose with the Hot Wheel cars. When I look back on my career, that is the single biggest thing that happened to me and Mongoose at the time. I still get boxes of toys from Mattel and cars are doing of mine after 50 some odd years or whatever it's been, that relationship. But I really think Mattel, Hot Wheels with the Mongoose, really, if it wasn't for them, I don't know where our careers would have gone, because it elevated the sport, it elevated Tom, it elevated me, and it really set a path forward in the sport. So I would say the single biggest thing was the Mattel Hot Wheel sponsorship.
Gotcha.
Outside of marrying my wife and outside of my daughter and outside of everything like that, I think that was the biggest thing.
Who was your? I mean, I know you and Tom McEwen were such close friends. He was, like you said, he was your best friend. But was he also your biggest rival, or was there another person who was your biggest rival?
Well, of course he was. Yeah, I mean, we really battled, when we raced Snake and the Mongoose. But another tough guy was Don Garlitz. I would say that, and I've said it before, that he was the single toughest guy that I had ever raced. It was Don Garlitz. So I raced him plenty. He was very tough, very demanding, but there's been a lot of great ones come along. Kenny Bernstein, racing him. And, I've had a lot of tough guys to race, and, they helped my career.
Exactly. What are your thoughts about NHRA today? I mean, obviously they went through a very difficult time last year. They lost a lot of races because of the COVID virus, yet they still managed to put on, a decent season with all the the roadblocks they had between states shutting down, so that stopped racing. They had to reschedule some races, relocate some races. I mean, this year already they had to post or cancel the Pomona Winter Nationals, the season opener. They had to cancel the next race in Phoenix. Now they're going to start the season in the Gator Nationals in Florida in mid-March. What do you think about where the NHRA is today, and what are your thoughts about how they overcame last year?
Well, I mean, they're struggling. Then lo and behold, Coca-Cola backed out of their sponsorship they had with them, which was a real shame.
Right.
But Camping World came along, so they picked up Camping World within a week's time. So I think between Camping World and NHRA, I think they're going to survive. I believe that we all need. First thing is to get that vaccine in our arms, where we can start opening up some of these tracks and restaurants and so on. But not only is NHRA struggling, there's a lot of restaurants and businesses that are struggling too. So this pandemic has really raised hell in every walk of life, I think. And NHRA, like I've said before, that the racers will cut the lock off the gate to get in there to race. They don't care how much money's up or what. They just want to go race their cars. So I think NHRA is always going to have competitors. I think the Connie Colettas and the Don Schumachers and the John Forces and all those guys are going to survive, and they're going to go out there and race. And we just got to get past this next year. I think this is going to be the biggest challenge we ever had, is getting through 2021. It's going to be the big challenge for NHRA to get through that. And fortunately, they got Camping World to help them.
Exactly. Is the competition today on the NHRA side, is it as good as it was back in your day? Is it better? How do you can you compare racing back in your day compared to today?
Well, it's apples and oranges. It's just two different things. Back in my day, we could buy an engine from Keith Black, for $4,000 or $5,000, and buy a supercharger for that.
Right.
For an engine. It's just very expensive. But you have to look at the people that are doing it. But our racing is no different than IndyCar racing and other forms of racing. You got a Roger Penske, you've got a Chip Ganassi, you got Andretti's. You've got a lot of big teams, and we still have that in drag racing. Those are big teams, and they're going to survive. They're going to survive and going to be well. Just got to get past this pandemic.
Okay. Well, one other question I wanted to ask you is fans. You have always been a big fan favorite. You mentioned you still get letters and that kind of thing. How heartening is that to you, that fans still want to know what's going on with Don Prudhomme. They still want to know, what he's doing these days. They still want to see him at the racetrack, maybe get autographs and that kind of thing. How does that make you feel inside?
Well, that makes me feel good. I appreciate it too, because, I'm just like anybody else. I get a little lonely and a little down, and then all of a sudden I'll get a fan letter from someone and it'll pick me up, and the book has been just a marvelous thing because it's really been well received. I'm really happy with that. Ilana Share did a hell of a job with it, and Cartech putting it all together. And by the way, for your fans, that I just happen to have a copy right here, snakeracinggear.com, and I'll autograph it for you. Whoever would like it, I'll autograph it. And yeah, that's how you can get it, snakeracinggear.com.
Great. Don, we've covered a lot in this interview, and is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to see? I mean, this is kind of like my signature when I do interviews like this. I always want to give the subject I'm interviewing one opportunity to say whatever they want to do. They want to promote something, they want to talk about something we didn't talk about that you felt is important. I mean, is there anything that you would want to add to what we've done so far today?
Well, just really the only thing. Listen, my life, I'm very happy. I've been, been blessed. I'm happy with it. But I think mainly the thing that bothers me is the sport itself. I'm just hoping that we can pull out of this. This is going to be a difficult year, and I'm encouraging the fans at every chance they get to go to a drag race and support the NHRA, because we need that. And I'm so proud that myself, Mongoose, Garland, Shirley, people like that were able to build this sport and have a fan following, but most of all, having crew members and crew chiefs that can make a living doing this. To watch people make a living drag racing was something I never thought I would see as a young kid growing up playing around with cars, but to see that happen, and I'm very happy with that. It's impressive, to see the sport growing the way it has, but we just need the support behind it. So I'm just urging everyone to get out to the track, pay attention, please watch it on television, because the ratings would really help us.
Exactly. As we were concluding this interview with Don Prudhomme, he told us a rather interesting story that involved him, Tony Stewart, and NHRA drag racer Leah Pritchett, and I felt obliged to include it in here. Have a listen.
I fixed him up.
Did you?
I introduced Tony. Yeah. I introduced Tony to Leah. That's how they met. We were out riding off-road cars at Ron Pratt's place. Right. We do that after Barrett Jackson, like Rusty, Gordon, Stewart, a bunch of guys.
Right.
So I was part of that group. Well, Leah called me, and I was just talking to her on the phone,
right.
And it was, what do they call that, voice or FaceTime? I was FaceTiming her.
Right.
So Stewart walks by and he sees this girl on the phone. He says, "Who's that?" I said, "It's Leah." And he grabbed my phone. And next thing I know, he started talking to Leah. And the next thing I know, they're going out. So
I'll be darned.
So I kind of fixed him up. Ask him, he'll tell you.
Don Prudhomme, matchmaker. That's another thing we can add to your list of things. So anyway.
She's a real pal. I really like her, She's really cool.
Exactly.
And to see those two hook up, it's kind of a real cool scene. Yeah, it's very, very nice.
Well, Don, I can't thank you enough for this interview. You have been fantastic, as you always are. And you're going to be 80, but you're still, to me, you're 40 still. You still got a lot to do. So thank you ever so much for taking the time. Good luck and best of success with the book, the sales and all that kind of thing. Good luck in April if you do Baja. I'm looking forward to you. I want you to win that. I may want to put down a few dollars and say, hey, I'm betting on Don Prudhomme and Jagger Jones to win this whole thing. So thank you ever so much for taking the time, and stay safe out there. And we'll be looking for you. Maybe I might catch up with you in Indianapolis. I'm hoping to get down there as well too. So thank you ever so much for taking the time here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Jerry. Nice to be on your show. Good luck with it.
Thank you. Was that not a great interview or what? Don The Snake Prudhomme, the legendary NHRA drag racer, very pleased and very happy that Don was able to spend such time with us here on the Racing Beat podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. And next week, we're going to have another racing royalty, NASCAR Hall of Famer Rusty Wallace. You don't want to miss that. And also, don't forget about last week's podcast, the initial debut of the Racing Beat podcast, where we talked with NASCAR Hall of Famer Ray Evernham. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Racing Beat, and we will talk with you next week right here on the Believe Podcast Network. I'm Jerry Bunkowski. Have a good week, everyone.